He was the strongest henchman, one of the 12 commanders of the Demon King. Though merely a human, he possessed destructive power capable of defeating heroes. His name was Dion, a demon of the Zero Legion. In truth, Dion had no power at all, it was all a misunderstanding. Who was talking about infinite power and defeating heroes? He merely wished to live a regular life, with 2 or 3 wives at most. Therefore, Dion threw his resignation letter directly at the Demon King, enraging him. It was known that Dion was the strongest henchman he had. "How dare you abandon me?" the Demon King exclaimed, then made an emotional turn, akin to an ex-lover clinging to Dion's legs, begging him to stay. It brought up the question, who was the master, and who was the servant here? The Demon King incessantly asked Dion for his reasons. With a high salary and excellent treatment, working felt like leisure. Why then, did he want to leave? Was it because he was overly bored, not having been sent to the battlefield, making his hands itch for action? Suddenly, a drop of Dion's blood fell, causing the Demon King to panic and call for a doctor. They assumed Dion was suffering post-traumatic stress from battling heroes. Still, he had been weak from the very start. If other demons found out the truth, it would indeed be a catastrophe. He would have no choice but to quietly sneak away as soon as possible. At that precise moment, Deputy Commander Ed arrived. He was the only one Dion felt safe around because Ed often traveled to the human world and brought gifts for him. Naturally, just like the Demon King, Ed wholeheartedly believed in Dion's boundless power. He even swore that he would heal him by all means, leaving him somewhat at a loss for words. "I've told you, I'm just a weak human," he said. Recalling the first time the Demon King met Dion, he had always been aloof, and even the Demon King couldn't understand his thoughts. He immediately invited Dion to join his demon army. To keep Dion from falling into depression due to boredom, the Demon King summoned all the commanders for a meeting. Dion, who had planned to sleep in, was called, which was quite irritating. This time, he even had to meet those demon commanders. Just looking at them scared him to death. To keep Dion from falling into depression due to boredom, the Demon King summoned all the commanders for a meeting. Dion, who had planned to sleep in, was called, which was quite irritating. This time, he even had to meet those demon commanders. Just looking at them scared him to death. Among the commanders, there were a few who didn't like him much. They were curious to know if the rumors about this guy were true. A servant poured him a glass of wine, the reason he risked coming here. However, as soon as he tasted it, his face turned into disappointment. It was clearly grape juice, which made him very angry. Was he being looked down upon? He thought it was because the Demon King had discovered his weakness and hence was withholding the wine. Today's meeting was also convened because of him. Could it be part of their plan to eliminate him? Just then, Commander No. 6 reported that the territory of the 12th Legion was being attacked and more than half of the village was destroyed by a horde of ghostly creatures. They were a species of demons created by the Demon King. These entities lacked senses and were only loyal to their instincts and desires. They were considered failed products. The reason behind this was believed to be because Dion had defeated the hero, so those ghostly creatures had the opportunity to become stronger. The Demon King decided to send him to assist the 12th Legion as a form of relaxation. Relaxation, my ass, this is sending me to my death, Dion thought. He intended to refuse as he was sick, but the others started to exaggerate his capabilities. Perhaps he is now trying to contain his anger and check if his body is healthy enough to set out, they speculated. He truly is a great leader. These yes-men should really tone it down a bit. In the end, Dion had to accept this task. The next day, he immediately set out. He silently thought that as long as he commanded his own Zero Legion in battle and played the role of the commander well, they were very strong, and everything would be resolved. Fortunately, during the previous meeting, he had managed to swipe a bottle of the underworld's precious wine. Dion had guzzled down the entire bottle. The taste was indeed exhilarating. Swiftly, their legion reached the village, which was now drowned in a sea of flames, corpses strewn about. Just then, a horde of monsters lunged to attack them. Both sides plunged into battle. The monsters were numerous, and giant ghostly creatures emerged as well. They seemed to be in a real pickle this time. Dion suddenly struck quickly, and the gigantic monsters were defeated. His form was imposing, yet only Ed recognized that he was drunk. At that moment, Dion seemed like a different person. His strength and speed became dominant, and the monsters were slashed into pieces. This frenzied state instilled fear in everyone. He didn't stop tearing apart the creatures, even those that seemed already dead. At that moment, Dion seemed like a different person. His strength and speed became dominant, and the monsters were slashed into pieces. This frenzied state instilled fear in everyone. He didn't stop tearing apart the creatures, even those that seemed already dead. They had to flee in terror. Dion was also clueless about what had happened and assumed his drunken bravado was to blame. Later, several commanders came to visit him, although they weren't close. This irritated him greatly. He just wanted to sleep in. Next, he had to explain to them about kindness so that when his secret was discovered, he wouldn't face a dire fate. He spun a few tall tales, but they all took it as a threat. What a delusion. One even spread a nasty rumor that Dion had annihilated the monster army, which infuriated him to the point of spitting blood. He was just a weak human, after all. The commander of the 3rd Battalion even boldly asked for a favor. He wanted to duel with Dion, but if this happened before Dion's recovery, it would truly be the end for him. The others even added fuel to the fire, promising to bring a large audience to watch. Was this a public execution? But looking at their expressions, Dion couldn't refuse. He was still planning to decline subtly due to his unrecovered injuries. The commander of the 3rd Battalion even boldly asked for a favor. He wanted to duel with Dion, but if this happened before Dion's recovery, it would truly be the end for him. The others even added fuel to the fire, promising to bring a large audience to watch. Was this a public execution? But looking at their expressions, Dion couldn't refuse. He was still planning to decline subtly due to his unrecovered injuries. The useless Commander No. 1 exclaimed, "I've always wondered why Commander Zero never engages in sparring, but now I understand. He's worried that his opponents will get injured." SOS, save me, Zeon thought to himself. Moreover, it's been a while since he last accepted a challenge, so I'm pretty sure he would have a hard time holding back during the fight, he continued. It meant that if Dion accepted the challenge, it would be a battle. Is this the absolute power the Demon King had faith in? Eventually, the challenger had to retract his war cry. "Although my pride is slightly hurt, I appreciate your gracious consideration," he admitted. Dion was a bit shocked at this point. Really? Geez, I haven't even said anything yet, he thought. The challenger didn't give up, though. He swore to himself to become stronger and challenge him again. Dion could only salute him. "You said you didn't want to fight, so give it up, please," he thought to himself. The Commander No. 1 also wanted a duel, which scared Dion a little. He needed to get out of this hellhole quickly. The next day, as he was still looking for a way to escape, he encountered a nightmare demon being harassed. The status of nightmare demons was the lowest here. Dion didn't know what to do when for the first time, he met a demon weaker than himself. He helped her up, and she thought he wanted to kill her. Her heart was won over because this was the first time someone had treated her kindly. To show him gratitude, she wanted to give Dion a tour around the garden and offer him some herbs to help alleviate his exhaustion. "My name is Hien, and I am the gardener tasked with tending to all the plants in the Demon King's castle," the demon girl introduced herself. Intrigued by the invitation to relax in a lush, green garden, Dion didn't decline. They quickly made their way there, and sure enough, the place didn't disappoint him. He could feel the refreshing aroma of the green plants and the clean air. But before he could revel in the pleasure, a demon flower suddenly attacked him. It was luckily intercepted in time. Dion instantly realized this place wasn't as safe as he had imagined, with carnivorous plants lurking everywhere, prompting an immediate escape. The chill of terror still clung to his skin. He felt foolish for thinking that there could be anything ordinary within the walls of the Demon King's fortress. Later, he found his way to the training ground of the Zero Legion but found it empty. Impulsively, Dion picked up a wooden sword and swung it a few times, but it was inexplicably heavy. He thought to himself, if he couldn't even lift a wooden sword, how would he fare on the battlefield against the enemies? The members of his squad, unknown to him, had appeared at the scene. Fortunately, they hadn't witnessed his earlier moment of weakness. In their eyes, Dion appeared formidable, truly living up to his reputation as the strongest commander. They warmly inquired about his injuries even though he was only there to mark his presence. Was there really a need to shower him with such reverence? Before leaving, he didn't forget to praise them for their excellent performance in the previous mission. Suddenly, an assassin from the kingdom lunged at him, but his leg went numb, causing him to fall and inadvertently dodge the attacker's blade. Panicking, Dion tried to flee but accidentally struck the attacker, incapacitating him. He was puzzled how a human could have infiltrated this place. But releasing him was not an option. Dion was certain of the imminent danger and struck him with the wooden sword. He instructed his subordinates to imprison the intruder in the great dungeon and report to the Demon King. They were amazed by his actions and held him in even higher esteem. Legion Zero is indeed terrifying, and the presence of our commander alone could decimate the entire legion, they thought, unaware of Dion's fortuitous escape. With everything settled, Dion decided to get some rest. Awakening, he discovered the Demon King had been there for an unknown period. He wanted to discuss the infiltrator. They quickly proceeded to the prison. The human strength was capable of defeating a demon, a power that even surpassed that of the Demon King himself. He was a hero candidate. It was unprecedented for the enemy to send a candidate hero on such a suicide mission. What exactly was the Empire planning? After Dion spoke with the infiltrator, he was accused of being a traitorous dog. You received the Empire's trust. You were to become a hero of the Empire, yet you betrayed us to side with the demon realm. Dion was rebuked. He questioned the infiltrator directly. What crime did you commit to be sent here to die? Why did the Emperor send you here? You were sent to this dangerous place, the demon realm, just to kill a traitor? It was clear the infiltrator had been discarded. Later, the Demon King informed Dion that Legion 1 requested reinforcement. They faced an actual hero, a powerful enemy that regular demons couldn't withstand. The following day, Dion found himself heading to the battlefield. He remembered accompanying the Demon King to the dungeon, but as his consciousness returned, he was already receiving orders for the battlefield, a trick of magic. Fear consumed him. Ed beside him was hallucinating. They had heard the battlefield was a horrific place, yet there seemed to be an eerie joy in the Demon King, as if he was off to a vacation. Commander of Legion 11, Ririnel, came to bid him farewell. One should not be fooled by her lovely appearance. Her power was second only to the Demon King. Before leaving, Ririnel gave Dion a special necklace. He initially refused, but learning that it could save his life, his refusal turned into eager acceptance. How could he turn down such a valuable gift? He unconsciously patted Ririnel on the head, making her delighted. Ed, standing beside, thanked her, emphasizing his concerns for Dion due to his injuries. He was playfully warned by Ririnel to protect her husband well. The tale of Dion defeating the hero was entirely a mistake. It was the hero who had self-destructed. At that moment, the hero had requested Dion to return and inform the kingdom of the outcome. Dion was aware of the hero's significant role in the previous war but wondered why the hero had embarked on this dangerous journey. Was it to achieve a more illustrious victory, to fulfill a specific vow or desire? However, days had passed, and they hadn't returned. Curiosity got the better of Dion, and he rushed to witness the outcome of the battle with the Demon King. He arrived just in time to see the hero, intent on a mutual destruction with the Demon King, being discovered by a giant demon. The demon attacked Dion without warning, no courtesy at all. Dion, with his speed, lunged to counterattack but couldn't penetrate the demon's thick skin. Just when he thought death was imminent, the ground beneath them collapsed. A loud crash echoed as the commander of the Legion 7 was inadvertently killed by Dion during the fall. However, he fell into enemy territory, surrounded by innumerable demons. And there, among the enemies, was the Demon King, his eyes displaying an ominous hunger. The hero, at this point, was on the brink of death, unable to complete his self-destruction. In his final moments, he transferred all his heroic powers to Dion through sheer willpower. Although imbued with the hero's strength, Dion felt unchanged, vulnerable, and still utterly mortal. In this precarious situation, surrounded by hostile demons and under the ominous gaze of the Demon King, Dion stood, a mere mortal endowed with powers he had yet to comprehend, with his fate hanging in the balance. As Dion was waiting for the inevitable grip of death to claim him, something unexpected happened. The Demon King offered him a place in his demonic legion. In a desperate bid for survival, Dion agreed. From that moment, an unlikely alliance was formed, and the demons started to regard him as a formidable warrior. They quickly moved to the front line, the boundary separating the human and demon realms. The front line was a scene of relentless combat between the demonic forces and the Empire. The commander of Legion 1 was in bad shape, indicating the immense power of the human hero. Dion thought he should have declined the Demon King's offer right then, but the fear of death forced his hand. The human empire was about to launch an attack, and Dion, despite knowing his weakness, had no choice but to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, at the human frontline camp, news of Dion's arrival, now known as the Zero Commander of the Demon King, had reached the humans, boosting the morale of the Demon Legion considerably. The Demon King Zero Commander was regarded as the strongest among the 12 commanders, making the prospect of the human empire's victory seem bleak. The human empire planned to send an assassin to kill Dion. While there were extraordinary rumors about him, no one had actually confirmed their veracity. It seemed possible that the tales of the Zero Commander were fabricated by the Demon King to boost his troops' morale. The human empire planned to send an assassin to kill Dion. While there were extraordinary rumors about him, no one had actually confirmed their veracity. It seemed possible that the tales of the Zero Commander were fabricated by the Demon King to boost his troops' morale. Dion's declaration to personally investigate the state of the Demon Legion uplifted Ed's spirits. He was convinced that Dion was truly committed to their victory, blissfully unaware that Dion was actually searching for a place to hide. When the demons saw Dion, their excitement was palpable, akin to encountering an idol. Their confidence soared, believing victory was certain with Dion on their side. A human assassin lurked nearby, observing Dion quietly. At first glance, Dion appeared frail and small, yet an undeniable aura of cold dominance and indifferent attitude exuded from him. Even shrouded in his cloak, the assassin could sense his terrifying power. He launched a silent attack to test Dion, but Dion evaded effortlessly. The assassin was forced to retreat, not realizing that Dion had merely tripped on a stone. It had nothing to do with skill. Dion, realizing the peril outside, decided it was safer to stay inside his tent. The failed assassination attempt didn't discourage the assassin, he waited patiently for the next opportunity. Inside the tent, Dion found Ed secretly drinking alone. Annoyed at not being invited, Dion was about to vent his irritation when he noticed Ed had prepared a letter to help him relax before the battle. Dion didn't refuse. The assassin seized this opportunity to divert their attention and poison Dion's drink. It was a lethal toxin, capable of killing instantly. However, Dion threw away the drink impulsively, angry at something trivial. It turned out, he was annoyed by a persistent fly, and his reaction to it made him waste the precious drink. It was only later that they realized the drink was poisoned. Ed quickly deduced an intruder's presence. The failed assassination attempt left the assassin terrified. He had confirmed that the Zero Commander's abilities weren't exaggerated. Dion was genuinely dangerous. The Demon Legion became wary after this incident, astonished that an assassin could infiltrate their camp. Apart from the Zero Commander, no one could detect him, boosting Dion's mystique, even though he himself was oblivious to his supposed skill. Dion secretly thought to himself, "The Zero Commander, my foot." Because of this ridiculous role, even those bastards from the Empire wanted to kill him. All because of that damned assassin. He didn't even get to drink his alcohol. Ed thought he would be blamed, but instead, he asked for another bottle of alcohol. There's no way it could be poisoned since the bottle cap hasn't been opened from the start. Dion's face began to twitch. He was really craving a drink now. Meanwhile, the assassin reported back to the hero, warning that the Zero Commander was extremely dangerous and that they stood no chance of winning against the Demon Legion. In the end, the hero decided to retreat to preserve their forces. The barren, desolate land, devoid of even a sliver of sunlight, was not worth capturing. We don't need to wield our weapons to take that useless piece of land. We need to make those demons think so, the hero declared. The mandate he received was to reclaim the land of the empire that the demons had occupied, not to expand the boundaries between their realm and the demons. The mission was complete. There was no need to risk lives against a formidable opponent like the Zero Commander, especially since he rarely engaged in battle himself. Thus, they could retreat without tarnishing their own honor. Suddenly, a subordinate rushed in with the news that the Demon Legion had attacked. Leading them was none other than the Zero Commander. After getting drunk, Dion switched into battle frenzy mode, transforming into a true demon. Wherever he went, the Imperial army was annihilated. At this point, the hero had to enter the battlefield. He almost got killed by a stealth attack, but thanks to the necklace given by Commander Ririnel, he narrowly escaped death. Both could feel a familiar vibe from each other. Although it was their first meeting, a battle was inevitable. Dion was fast, but the hero was not slow either. He was able to block Dion's sword. Despite Dion's speed, his attacks weren't powerful. It was as if he was concealing his true strength, causing the hero to be wary. Suddenly, Dion dropped his sword and halted the fight to negotiate. Both sides had reclaimed their territories, and there was no need to waste more energy. "Why don't we agree to each defend our own territories?" Dion suggested. The hero, although still eager to continue the fight and defeat Commander Zero, looked back at his army. They were in a terrible state. Continuing the battle would mean no chance of victory. Even the commander of Legion 1 couldn't understand why Dion was stopping now when it seemed a prime opportunity to counterattack. At that moment, Dion collapsed. His health was in a critical condition, that's why he stopped the battle here. After all, if he were to be defeated, it could affect the morale of the entire demon army. So, he chose to retreat proactively. Indeed, his wisdom was extraordinary. From the beginning, he had always been skeptical about the Demon King appointing him as the Zero Commander of the Demon Legion, but through this event, everyone's doubts were cleared. Dion was worthy of that position. At the same time, Ririnel, Dion's obsessive fan, discovered that the necklace was destroyed. This meant that Dion was in danger. She immediately rushed to his side. "Whoever dared to injure my husband, you're doomed." She fumed. But when she got there, it was safe again. He had reported all the information of the new hero to the Demon King and suddenly returned to his normal state. He only remembered that after drinking, he thought he was reckless but realized that the mission was completed and he had achieved a great feat. Getting drunk like this was too surreal. It was then he realized that the new hero was his brother, who had caused him much suffering in the past. The Demon King also arranged for him to return to the Empire to spy as the heroic image of the Empire. Before leaving, he didn't forget to seal him with magic as a kind of guarantee. After a long time away, his return to the Empire would make them suspicious. Ed was promoted by the Demon King to be the commander of Legion 9 because the position was still vacant. This meant he would have to give up his position as Deputy Commander Dion, and it made him a little bit heartbroken. He wondered if he wanted to abandon the Deputy Commander position because he was too difficult to serve or something, and also promised to buy gifts for Ed when he returned, which touched him. In the last minute, he refused to become the commander of the army to serve him, wishing him a safe journey. A few days later, Dion returned to his mansion and was immediately stopped by his bodyguards. Only then did he have to take off his cloak, and they were shocked to realize who he was. Inside, many servants were welcoming him back. The old butler, remember, was still here. He had taken great care of him before. Everyone else thought that he had been on a conquest for the past 6 months, but he was actually the Commander Zero of the Demon King. Dion just wanted to sleep but had to meet the Emperor, which was annoying. At the same time, his brother, the hero Cruel, also received this information, and he sent an assassin to kill Dion immediately. After getting dressed, he looked as handsome as a Korean oppa, making countless young ladies swoon. The maids were incessantly gossiping, giving him a bit of a headache. The current king, Eduardo Desire, ascended to the throne by eliminating all rivals. The 9th prince, who had killed all his siblings and crowned himself. He was notorious as a tyrant, and the name of the empire was also changed by him. Other kingdoms couldn't stand still. Thus, the war started and lasted for over 8 years. This was nothing short of hell for him. The empire annexed a third of the continent and became a vast empire led by the emperor with his tyrannical and warlike nature. He was granted the title of Honorable Count for his many achievements in the war. Although he couldn't clearly remember his memories from the battlefield, he was sure he fought desperately to survive. A territorial war between the human and demon factions dragged him into its vortex, from which he couldn't escape. Suddenly, the outside of the carriage shook. It turned out that his brother had teamed up with the Revolutionary Army to assassinate Dion because in the Empire, he was the effective henchman, viewed as the Empire's dog. The Revolutionary Army was formed during the brutal 8-year war caused by the Empire. During the Empire's invasion of other kingdoms, their homes and villages were all conquered by the Empire. Furthermore, the most important things in their lives were all taken away by the Empire, leading them to become frantic, doing everything possible to destroy the Empire and the Emperor. The Revolutionary Army easily captured him, but then forgot his name, which was quite careless. He had already told them he was not the Empire's henchman. With white hair and red eyes as arrogant as the rumors, how could he deny it? Dion immediately remembered his dagger, pulled it out, and struck, but his attack was easily blocked. Just kidding. But the joke ended with him forcefully pinned to the ground. Seeing his weak form, even the assassin began to doubt, how could this be? Was he a fake hero? Just as the assassin was about to strike him down, they were stopped by a group of Shadow Knights, demons born from the 8-year war, led by Dion Hart. The terrifying thing about these Shadow Knights wasn't their skills but the fact they had no family left and nothing to lose, making them extremely brutal. The assassin, intending to kill him and then quickly flee, suddenly felt a searing pain. Dion's berserk mode was activated instantly, bidding the assassin a painful farewell. Although the assassin died, Dion didn't stop. He kept punching the corpse, making an example for those who targeted him. All the remaining foes also didn't survive. Afterwards, his carriage proceeded straight into the royal palace, startling the royal guards. They intended to stop him, but on hearing his name, they started to shudder. Thanks to the emperor's favor, Dion could meet him anytime he wanted. At that time, the emperor was in the banquet hall celebrating the new hero, who was none other than his brother, Cruel. Today, we celebrate the rise of our new hero, Cruel Heart, and his first victory. Suddenly, Dion appeared, covered in blood, shocking everyone. Quickly, they recognized him as the honorable count of the royal family, Dion Hart. The emperor hadn't seen him for a long time. While he did say Dion could meet him whenever he wished, appearing in such a disheveled state was unexpected. Dion could only apologize to the emperor because they were attacked on the way. The emperor met him privately to discuss this matter. The audacity of the revolutionary army to attack the empire's hero. They were no match for Dion, the vanguard in the 8-year war, who had earned more victories than anyone else. When he left as the first hero of the empire, he successfully repelled the demon corps and saved countless comrades, something no one else had achieved before. I've already said I'm as weak as a snail, but everyone keeps exaggerating, claiming I'm mighty and dominant. Please, tone it down, Dion thought to himself. It was an extraordinary achievement to face the Demon King, albeit at a significant cost. The emperor asked if Dion had found a way to lift the curse, but Dion was clueless. He assumed it was the mark of magic left by the Demon King. The emperor suggested that he should return to the demon realm to seek a remedy for the curse. It was unfortunate to send a talent like Dion back to that eerie place. Dion also shared his encounter with an assassin who was considered a potential hero. Why waste talent on sending him there? He's a lowly being who has tarnished the name of heroes. It's perhaps because Dion was trusted even after revealing his identity as the Commander Zero that the Emperor realized his value. But, for the Emperor, the more Dion was trusted by the Demon King, the more useful information he could gather. Dion questioned why Cruel was made a hero. The Emperor knew Dion's only regret was not being able to kill him himself. Cruel was the only remaining member of the Hart family, who took in and cared for Dion due to his unique appearance of white hair and red eyes. Many unpleasant rumors circulated about Dion. He felt a sense of belonging only when he looked at the family photo. He wished he had been born with black hair and blue eyes. Because of the rumors, his strict father ordered him to hide his unusual appearance, and even his parents were displeased with him. His frail health and distinct appearance, uncharacteristic of his family, and his inability to uphold the count's title for the family, always made him feel insufficient. His brother was always the protective figure, and Cruel's improving swordsmanship skills delighted their father. In their eyes, his brother was a prodigy, while Dion was defective. He felt lonely despite living with them. Dion believed that becoming stronger would earn his parents' love. But outside, everything changed. When his parents and brother met the new swordsman and were bullied by a group of nobles, Dion was momentarily happy as it was the first time someone initiated a conversation with him, but they quickly showed their true colors. He was reputed as a nuisance of the Hart family. He explained he was confined because of his frail body, yet they persisted. They told him the Hart family would abandon him sooner or later. Angry, Dion punched them, wondering how these nobodies knew so much about his situation. They fought until his brother arrived and found Dion unconscious. The doctor informed them of Dion's frail health, especially cautioning against sunlight exposure. However, upon waking, his father scolded him for fighting, although he was not the instigator. He was confined to his room for self-reflection as if discarded by his family, yet Dion hadn't given up on them. He read books daily to enhance his knowledge and even practiced swordsmanship with his frail body to gain his family's recognition, but to no avail. Dion decided to do nothing until he turned 14. Only his brother occasionally played chess with him. His parents never visited, citing busyness. His mother would sneak in to see him after he fell asleep, and that was all. The war was approaching, and family meetings would become scarcer. Each family had to send a representative to battle, and naturally, Cruel took on this responsibility. Suddenly, the Emperor's order for Dion to join the battlefield came. The family who considered him a burden now abandoned him entirely. Even his mother's visit that night was to bid farewell. Poor Dion was then brought to the battlefield, although he barely had the strength to lift a sword. Furthermore, People constantly criticized him as the forsaken illegitimate child, thrown away by his family, and that was the reason he had to participate in this brutal battlefield. From that point, every day for Dion was like living in hell, endlessly fighting amidst screams and the stench of blood. He had to survive at all costs. The vicious battle persisted. While others received letters from their families, Dion got nothing but a letter of appointment as a frontline commander. In that moment, he was resolved. If the Hart family cast him into hell, he would do the same to them. Upon returning, he brutally murdered his parents, the ones who sent him to this living hell. That night, witnessing the death of his parents, his brother Cruel, in disbelief and rage, attacked him. It seemed as if two personalities existed within Dion, one weak and the other, a contrasting, bloodthirsty, war-mad entity. Back to the present, it was unclear what had occurred. Dion remembered being on a carriage, attacked by an assassin, and suddenly found himself in the royal palace. This could be explained when his war-mad persona emerged. Yet the truth remained, his physical frailty was undeniable. And this feast was to honor his brother. Days before the presentation, he met Commander Zero from the Demon Realm, who skillfully stirred the battlefield atmosphere. Dion instantly dismissed the comparison, as he considered himself weak and incomparable to Zero. Although discussing health with Cruel was less appealing than having desserts, Cruel's concern only ignited Dion's anger. He vowed never to show weakness before him, standing as a mere observer like when he was dragged to the battlefield. At this moment, Duke Illuster approached. He was the leader of the opposing noble faction against the Emperor but had no correlation with Dion. Dion directly offended him, shocking everyone. To have such an attitude towards the Empire's only duke affirmed Dion Hart's audacious reputation. Was this man really a duke? Dion's mouth was still full. First, he needed to swallow. But his chewing and stuffing infuriated the duke even more. Prince Elphifius of the Empire intervened, promising to defend Dion against the sinister duke. Over pudding? Really? Suddenly, Dion was bumped into by someone. It was Princess Aledia, known for her affection for handsome men, yet her forwardness exceeded the norm. Dion spat out blood, alarming everyone. It was actually the effect of the pudding. Before he could explain, his mouth was covered by a guard's cloth. Oh, hell! The Emperor and General Nemesius were also present. The princess claimed responsibility. Implying her excitement caused Dion to vomit blood. How could a hero bleed just from a hug of a princess? Perhaps internal injuries were the cause. These nonsensical arguments baffled Dion. Distinguishing between the smell of blood and pudding, and summoning a royal physician, was ludicrous. However, this situation allowed him to feign weakness to quickly return home. Suddenly, he started swaying and fell but was caught by his brother, igniting his anger. Was Cruel pretending to care for him? 8 years of battling in hellish conditions hadn't dampened his hatred for Cruel and the family. After the loss of his parents and family at the hands of his brother, Cruel allied with the Duke, becoming his strongest sword. From that moment, he was determined to confront Dion and remove the thorn in his eye. Dion had returned to the mansion only to find it ablaze. The shadowy night squad was also there. It turned out that the Revolutionary Army had attacked his mansion, and Dion even saw them foolishly playing with bombs. Boom! A loud explosion echoed as he threw back a bomb, hitting an assassin hiding there. How unlucky. What mattered more was why these leeches were here. Had they been expelled from the royal army for their notorious behaviors? They clung to him as if they were close, those madmen. Dion noticed a revolutionary soldier trying to escape. He wanted to capture him for information, but his body couldn't move. Just then, the old housekeeper swiftly knocked the man down. Dion was surprised at his strength. 3 significant obstacles to overthrowing the emperor were the general from the war 8 years ago and now the emperor's guard, Nemesius, Prime Minister Ardal, who stabilized the populace with excellent policies and financial management, and Dion Hart, who led the vanguard in the war 8 years prior and was now considered the emperor's. As Dion mainly operated in the shadows, Monitoring and predicting his actions were challenging. This time he set out under the pretext of exterminating monsters, but his actual intentions remained unknown. They genuinely didn't realize that for 8 years, he never wielded a sword for the emperor but for his own survival, to avenge the family that discarded him. A week after returning to the empire, the burnt part of the mansion was somewhat cleaned up. The accommodation for those mad dogs was unexpectedly restored and ready. Now, their sole task was to rest and enjoy life before the emperor summoned them. Dion thought he would sleep all day but had to deal with a pile of documents. If not for the housekeeper who brought them, he would have thrown them away. After witnessing his strength the other day, Dion had to be careful. Meanwhile, the shadowy knights started causing trouble as they had nothing to do. A week earlier, the emperor had completely transferred the heart's territorial rights to him, probably documented somewhere in this pile. This infuriated Dion. He didn't want to recall the dark memories there and intended to return the family's territory to the emperor sooner or later. Suddenly, the prince and General Nemesius visited. Clearly, the old man didn't like him much. They were likely there to probe his attitude towards the princess's disrespect the day before. Although she appeared naive and infatuated with handsome men, behind that face was a completely different person who didn't love him at all. Everything was a ploy to attract forces for the royal family. Additionally, the prince wanted a favor. He wanted Dion to become his friend. Over time, he always wanted to get closer to the duke, but it was challenging to meet someone so busy. The prince always had heavy responsibilities and was never free to do as he pleased, even in personal matters. Dion intended to refuse, but the general's piercing gaze meant there was no choice but to accept. This would also increase Dion's trust in the royal family. The prince invited him to the palace for a sword duel, a subtle threat against his frail body. The general also had something to say. The emperor wanted the captured revolutionary, aimed at capturing and destroying the entire revolutionary army. Of course, if Dion didn't want to, he could refuse. He didn't want to cause more trouble, so he agreed. However, the general wanted to ask about the cause of their deaths. Already killed, what's there to ask, Dion thought to himself. In his eyes, Dion was once a weak boy discarded by his family onto the battlefield. Having survived bloody battles, his personality changed, a madness focused solely on living through endless combat, while the normal part of him clung to the memories of his ordinary self. Both personalities coexisted, with the former ignoring the latter to escape reality. He wondered how long one could deceive themselves. Disgusted at the abandonment of humanity, the old housekeeper suggested that Dion should send the Shadow Knights to fight monsters to alleviate their restlessness. In their absence, Dion could rest. However, they dragged him along. The housekeeper advised him to step outside for fresh air, an invitation Dion couldn't refuse. Soon, they reached the border, a place teeming with monsters. The Mad Knights charged into battle. Liner, appointed by the emperor himself and able to manage the Shadow Knights, was with Dion. Unlike them, Liner was a genuine, skilled knight, yet she was stuck with these lunatics who reveled in combat, even considering attacking each other after defeating the monsters. Suddenly, an arrow narrowly missed Dion, a sign that assassins were lurking. The Shadow Knights rushed to his aid. Dion ingested a temporary paralytic antidote, ensuring his injuries weren't an immediate concern. His berserk personality activated, allowing him to capture one assassin while the others were slain by the Shadow Knights. The assassins were now trembling, overwhelmed by Dion's madness and the ferocity of the Shadow Knights. Initially considering themselves hunters, they now found themselves the hunted. Dion's brother had added a condition to the assassination mission: injuring Dion would earn them half the promised payment, even though the Duke's order was assassination, not injury. This self-funded modification perplexed everyone. Wasn't the brother consumed with enough hatred to want to deal with Dion personally? On Dion's end, all the assassins were quickly defeated. By the time they realized they should not have provoked him, it was too late. Their pleas for mercy were met with death. Dion thrust his sword into one of the assassins, demanding to know who sent them. The next day, the emperor received a complaint from the kingdom of Ilion. The esteemed Count Dion Hart had been forced to eliminate a horde of monsters near the border. They argued that his counter-ambush near their walls was an act of aggression threatening their kingdom. Dion, having been shot in the left shoulder, would find it difficult to use that arm for a month. To sum it up, they were demanding compensation for this incident. Readers might wonder, how are these events even related? The emperor was furious. He perceived the complaints as an attempt to take advantage of him, perhaps thinking he had grown too lenient recently, which allowed them to make such audacious claims. Instantly, he ordered preparations to conquer the kingdom of Ilion to make them pay for their insolence. The prime minister immediately objected. They had only just found peace 2 years after an 8-year-long war. Another battle would incur significant financial and human losses. However, the emperor, a tyrant who had killed all his siblings to seize the throne, dismissed these concerns. Troops would be secretly prepared. The emperor also mentioned the Church of Salvation, a growing religious faction in the slums. In these chaotic times, it was understandable that the populace would turn to religion for peace. However, the church was expanding too rapidly and needed to be eradicated before the war. The emperor intended to entrust this task to Dion, even though he was injured, but the general objected. He was always wary of Dion, who had a dual personality. His mental state was like a ticking bomb, incapable of taking responsibility for his actions, completely forgetting everything when his warlike persona activated. That night, he annihilated everyone in his family except his brother. Since then, they have always been adversaries, each seeking ways to kill the other. Cruel sought the support of the duke, and so Dion also had to cling tightly to the emperor's coattails to counter him. It was also the way the emperor could use Dion at his convenience without injuring himself in his struggle against his own brother. He must need me, the emperor declared sternly. That afternoon, Dion woke up but couldn't remember anything since he was struck by the arrow. If it weren't for the wound on his shoulder, he would have thought he had been dreaming. At the same time, the butler discovered a traitor within Dion's mansion. The traitor was immediately dealt with. This narrowed down the suspects to either the revolutionaries or enemies of the royal family, or perhaps Duke Illuster, the leader of the aristocratic faction. Dion, being a count, realized that he would have difficulty confronting them, and the butler suggested seeking the emperor's assistance. Indeed, the butler was a capable man. Dion had to resolve this quickly to return to peaceful days. When he entered the palace, it so happened that Duke Illuster was having a meeting with the emperor. Unlucky for Dion, he had to wander around and kill time while waiting. Just at that moment, the princess and the prince arrived. She was about to rush forward and seduce him, but luckily his brother held her back. He was still caught in her infatuation. He was then dragged to have tea with them. The princess kept clinging to him. This situation was utterly doomed. If he knew he would encounter them here, he would have arrived earlier or later. The princess even directly fed him cookies. It was as if she wanted to assassinate him without a knife, a true torturous hell. They talked about politics and royal power, but he couldn't care less, only hoping to escape soon. The emperor was the one who killed all of their royal family, but they held no grudge against this uncle of theirs. Their father, the Grand Prince, was a kind person, unlike the royals, and the only one related to the 9th prince. After a tragic accident, the Grand Prince passed away. Since then, the 9th prince took care of the kids as an uncle. The politics of the empire were not as calm as it seemed. Under the placid surface, tumultuous undercurrents were moving. A knife was clearly pointed at the emperor, and if things continued this way, he might never sit on the throne. The wave of the aristocrats was getting stronger. To secure the power of the royal family and the emperor, they needed to pull Dion to their side. He excused himself to use the bathroom to escape them but didn't know where it was. Wanting to ask for directions, but his smile wasn't normal at all. The guy there was startled and pulled his sword, wanting to skewer him. "It's a misunderstanding. I just want to know where the bathroom is." Turns out, that guy was a spy infiltrating the royal palace to steal documents. Thinking Dion had discovered his identity, he was about to flee but Cruel grabbed him by the neck. What a coincidence! Duke Illuster also appeared there, and in his hands, he held the royal documents the thief had stolen. He kept praising Dion for his great achievement. "Damn it, I just wanted to use the bathroom." The prince and princess rushed over and saw Dion's nose bleeding non-stop and panicked. However, that weak spy could never be his opponent, his blade must have been poisoned. He thought to himself, "These kids are starting again, I told them I'm weak." The imperial doctor, upon seeing Dion, was at a loss for words. "You again? Last banquet I was called because Count Hart was in danger. It's really frightening there, no patients but all high-ranking people. The pressure is suffocating, especially since all of them are obsessed with Count Hart's health. Each time like this, I feel like I'm losing decades of my life." Dion's wound wasn't severe, but why was there so much blood? This put the imperial doctor under immense pressure. "I also don't know why, big brother." General Nemesius was also present. "The Emperor summons Count Honorable Dion Hart for a talk," announced a royal attendant. Duke Aluster had discovered that the draft document was about the secret mobilization of troops for war by the Emperor and began plotting something. Meanwhile, Dion was facing the Emperor. "Your face isn't looking good. Were you severely injured while capturing the spy? You're sweating profusely. Be honest about your condition, you are one of the Empire's crucial strategists." Dion could only think, "Oh crap, he was just trying to go to the bathroom, why all the tension?" Dion brought up reclaiming the Hart family's territory but was immediately refused. Even the request to return the Dark Knight assassins was denied. He tried to request a leave of absence but was also denied. "If you agree to my request, I will grant one of your wishes." Inside, it was a request for reinforcement. "There is a religion established by charlatans that's actively operating in the slums. Your task is to eradicate them." He was about to refuse, but the Emperor said, "I also assigned this to Duke Aluster and Count Cruel earlier." Dion instantly made a 180-degree turn and agreed. SOS. He would later realize that this was a trap set by the Emperor, but by then it would be too late. "Whichever of the two of you completes the mission first, I will fulfill that person's wish," the Emperor declared. Dion could not afford to lose to his brother. Upon returning home, the Crown Prince had sent him many bottles from the palace. Though fragrant, they necessitated constant bathroom trips. Additionally, the palace's imperial doctor prescribed numerous health supplements, as he wouldn't have peace if Dion's health wasn't stable. Meanwhile, Liner investigated the Salvation Group for him. Their actions were suspicious. Distributing free rations from the start required a significant amount of money. They were maintained by the contributions of a few nobles, but even for nobles, the expenses were overwhelming. Dion was unsure of their ultimate goal. He was considering a bathroom trip and further planning when Liner, excited, thought he was taking action himself. "I just want to use the bathroom, sis," Dion protested as Liner dragged him to the Salvation Church. Even a nature's call wasn't permitted. He was in a SOS situation, remembering a previous mistake and determined not to repeat it. Having finally relieved himself, a pleasant feeling washed over him until he noticed his brother, Cruel, also present. A fight broke out instantly, but Dion was still not in his best shape. The wound from the previous day had not fully healed. He realized that the wound on his right hand was inflicted by assassins under his brother's command. As the two were about to fight to the death, Liner appeared, distraught at Dion's injury and blamed herself for not protecting him better. Dion ordered her to step back. Their duel would have to be postponed as both were infiltrating the Salvation Church for a mission. Dion smeared mud on his face to blend in as a homeless person, while Liner, repulsed by the stench, reluctantly did the same to keep up. Dion stumbled and fell, looking every bit a beggar, when a girl from the Salvation Group approached him. She assumed his fall was due to hunger and even noticed his bleeding mouth, thinking he was severely ill. Thus, Dion infiltrated the group easily. Liner, on the other hand, was awestruck and impressed by his acting. However, she was stopped and turned away because they had enough followers for the day. No matter how disheveled the dress, her power couldn't be concealed, and they easily identified her as the Emperor's spy. Looking at Dion's frail and disheveled appearance, he seemed every bit the beggar, and they harbored no suspicions towards him. Since entering the Salvation Church, it seemed typical, with kind monks and improvement efforts for the unfortunate. The guards reminded him of holy knights. As Dion feared his distinct appearance would be recognized, a girl tossed his cloak aside, revealing his red eyes and white hair. "Isn't this the person?" Dion thought anxiously, and quickly played the part of a pitiable figure, elaborating on being abandoned by his family due to his unusual features. This narrative dispelled the girl's suspicions, as the infamous imperial hero with red eyes, rumored to be a wicked vampire, certainly wouldn't be in such a pathetic state. The girl began preaching the tenets of their faith to him. The religion was established to redeem those oppressed and tormented under the rule of the tyrant Eduardo. She attributed Dion's sufferings to the king. If the monarch ruled justly, would Dion have endured such pain? She even claimed that Dion's earlier stumble was due to the king's negligence in maintaining the roads. Dion was bemused but played along. Although their faith didn't rely on material possession, it was always accompanied by meals. The prospect of getting food without work was enticing to many. This was precisely why this sect could expand its influence so quickly. Dion then roamed around, seeking evidence and information about the puppet master behind this organization. Suddenly, the girl called him back. Even in poverty, her face was full of vitality and happiness. She kept praising the sect. Just then, her brother pulled her away. Dion thought he had discovered something, but they just handed him a pile of bread and then meandered towards the prayer room. Dion had encountered the priest and the girl from before in this place. They immediately spotted the intruder, but luckily, Dion managed to escape just in time. It was his brother, Cruel, who pulled him behind a curtain. They hid a spatial door on the wall, only accessible to the chosen ones. Several of them quickly went inside. Only then could the two brothers come out. Dion was irritated, telling his elder brother not to meddle in his affairs. Dion noticed a mesmerizing gem on the wall that, at a fair price, could create phenomena resembling magic. This was a method developed by humans to attain the magic exclusively meant for demons. However, not everyone could use it, and for witches, it was even harder to execute. It seemed they used this to bewitch their followers. Suddenly, there was a loud noise. Liner had arrived, thinking her master was being captured. This startled the blue-haired nun, who immediately recognized that the frail man from before was, in fact, Dion, the intruder. The reason Cruel was here wasn't for investigation. His main objective was to eliminate Dion, his own brother. Duke Illuster was the mastermind behind this Salvation Church. Because he sought revenge on Liner, he had to make his presence known. They had to leave quickly before more enemy forces arrived. At that moment, the girl, instead of fleeing, pledged her life and allegiance to Dion. Through his naive actions, she believed Dion to be a genuine hero, fearlessly venturing into danger alone. He thought, "It's just coincidence, am I really that brave?" 3 days later, they were still tirelessly searching for a witch who could decipher the magic within that room, but nobody had succeeded. The majority of the witches were from the south, but trying to find them would take too much time. Just at that moment, the steward arrived with news that a witch had been found in a village a day's journey away. They quickly headed there, but, to their surprise, Cruel had also arrived. It was a classic case of a narrow road meeting an old enemy. Suddenly, Dion was hit on the head by a stone. An old woman in the village, who was shouting incessantly, demanded that Dion be driven away, or the entire village would face disaster. She insisted he leave immediately. Dion's berserk mode was activated upon being injured, causing the old woman to become petrified with fear. Fortunately, he regained his composure, because the old woman was the very witch he had been seeking. Her granddaughter, Ran, advised against judging others by their appearance. Even if he was perceived as a threat, no harm had been done yet. She introduced herself as Ran and seemed to know the reason for his visit, to find a witch capable of addressing issues related to a sin-absorbing amulet. She agreed to assist him since she herself was a witch. This left Dion somewhat astonished, as she was young yet immensely skilled. Given his urgency to complete his mission, Dion accepted her help. The old witch's demeanor was starkly different from that of his brother, Cruel. She mentioned that despite everything he had been through, she bore no hatred for him. If she also turned against him, he might never experience love from anyone in the world. She called him her child, implying that a creature deprived of love cannot thrive for long. She hinted at a survival battle alongside his brother and made a cryptic statement about him being the harbinger of the apocalypse. But if he prevailed, the disaster could be averted. As Dion and Ran made their way back, he was curious about the future they foresaw for him. They had glimpsed the fate of a village child, but Dion's destiny seemed intertwined with theirs. Though they refrained from divulging all details about his future, they revealed some insights. Hatred is like a volcano, starting small but rapidly growing until it consumes everything. The individual in question resembled a ticking bomb, poised to explode at any moment. His name was Dan, and he sought Dion's guidance. If you truly are a calamity, then you will need me in the future. It turned out that Dan was the old witch's grandson. Since his childhood, the witch foresaw that Dan was destined to be a significant ally to the calamity, and from that day forward, people's attitude towards him changed. He faced prejudice and was attacked, labeled as the puppet of disaster, and was ostracized from the village. Friends and villagers who once laughed with me turned their backs because of a prophecy. Unable to bear this treatment, Dan resolved to embrace the role of the calamity's right hand. Finally, the one called a calamity appeared, prompting Dan to rush to his side. They returned to Dion's mansion together. Dan's impulsive nature was evident, but he pledged not to disappoint his master. I just want to live in peace. I would drive disaster and calamity to the mountains now if I could, he said. They were to act immediately with the allies from the Dark Knight squad, while Dan was to stay at the mansion. With no combat experience or abilities, following them would be an untenable burden. Yet, he still boasted of being the calamity's right hand. That night, they sprang into action. The Dark Knights attacked the church and set it ablaze. While causing a commotion, Dion and Dan were to sneak into the magic room to unravel its secrets. The assailants were warned not to harm the innocent. Ironically, after setting the houses on fire, they asked the homeowners to put it out. It was utter madness. The scene was chaotic. They were reluctant to kill the people there because these were the ones who had been pushed to the edge, with nowhere to go. This place was their last hope. They were desperate enough to believe that death was preferable to the destruction of this sanctuary. Everyone there realized that the Emperor's sword was behind this attack. Their anger was insurmountable. At the same time, Ran and the others reached the magic gemstone. Upon inspection, she noticed something amiss. I believe they've used the gemstone as a medium to cast spells on the people. It has various uses, including distorting and manipulating space. Suddenly, she discovered that it wasn't a bewitching spell but a concealed magic, something only a demon could execute. It would take some time to undo it, a revelation that surprised Dion. Ran was more powerful than he thought, certainly not an ordinary witch. After dismantling the spell, they were able to proceed. In front of them stood something resembling a prayer church, marked with numerous cracks and a mysterious door. Inside was a forest. They had intentionally created an alternative space. I believe you need to open the door following a specific pattern to access the actual room behind it, Ran suggested. It would take her at least 10 minutes to break the spell and unveil the pathway ahead. While struggling, Dion suddenly found himself in a strange place, where Cruel was also present. It was the mysterious room that concealed all the documents of the person behind this whole scheme, but Cruel had destroyed them himself. Dion wanted to lunge at him but was stopped and even hoisted up like a captured animal. Cruel's actions made Dion realize that Duke Illuster was the puppet master. He had been defeated from the start, made a fool of. Before leaving, Cruel warned Dion not to reveal anything about that day, or he would undoubtedly die. The next day after waking up, Ran explained to Dion how he had accessed the document room. By making a circle counterclockwise 3 times and clockwise twice, he would automatically be transported there. It was a coincidence that Dion was wandering around there. Magic, indeed. The butler then informed Dion of a guest sent by the emperor to escort him to the palace by royal command. Coincidentally, his brother was also summoned there. Rumor had it that Count Dion Hart had been quite audacious. He had killed criminals and left some survivors, paving the way for the empire to find the real culprits. On Cruel's end, he was the one who found the culprit and provided the evidence. Wasn't all of this orchestrated by them? Although both brothers had distinguished themselves, the reward was granted to Cruel Hart for resolving the issue. Cruel expressed his wish to claim the lands that the honorary Count Dion Hart owned, a clear act of robbery. Dion, who had wanted to return those lands to the emperor, changed his stance upon hearing his brother's demand and reluctantly handed them over. However, a title was required for Cruel to reclaim the family's lands. The emperor offered two choices: either renounce the Hart family name and accept a new title with a different name, or become the actual head of the Hart family. Cruel rejected both options, puzzling even Dion, who couldn't comprehend why his brother wouldn't want to lead the prestigious and powerful Hart family. The emperor was frustrated with the brothers. Neither wanted the position, so he could only grant the property rights to Duke Illuster, assuring that the duke would return the management rights whenever desired. In the end, only Dion was asked to stay. Certainly, the emperor would reprimand him for this failure, but he did not. Instead, the emperor informed Dion that the upcoming war would commence sooner than anticipated. The removal of the church had been timely, and the kingdom of Ilion had started creating an intolerable commotion. This was merely the prelude to a war for continental unification. Of course, the Demon King wouldn't remain passive while the empire annexed various nations of the continent. The emperor needed Dion there to ensure the Demon King wouldn't interfere in this war. Moreover, the emperor had detected the Demon King's seal on Dion and expressed his wish not to see it during their next encounter. A confidential royal meeting was convened, where the emperor announced to everyone that the invasion war would begin in 3 days. This decision faced significant opposition, but under the emperor's authority, all had to remain silent. Furthermore, the emperor was aware that the recent activities of the Salvation Society were instigated by the duke. However, there was no concrete evidence. Rumors circulated rapidly, suggesting the duke was the savior, while the emperor was portrayed as a villain. Although the emperor had threatened the duke with a sword, the duke defiantly retorted that the emperor wouldn't be able to levy war taxes if the nobility began to resist. Indeed, even as the emperor, he couldn't suppress the duke, which only spurred the duke's ambition to seize the throne faster. His first order of business would be to deal with Dion, the emperor's sword. That night, the crown prince also came to deliver the emperor's command to him. If the Demon King initiated a war, he would have to return immediately. This could be considered a threat, as no one knew what the Demon King would offer him. If it was enough for him to betray the empire, a catastrophic disaster would befall them. That evening, as he was preparing to leave, the Dark Knights arrived. They wanted to follow him to the demon realm but were easily stopped by the old steward. Meanwhile, the revolutionary army was silently observing his every move. Naturally, they didn't let him leave easily. They had received an order from the revolutionary leader Daniel to assassinate him. The duke had long colluded with the revolutionaries. They were planning to overthrow the emperor at the height of the battle when the royal army was at its weakest. That would be their opportunity. However, the duke had also anticipated the fate of those assigned to assassinate Dion, death. Because the emperor would have certainly ensured the royal guard escorted him away safely. Yet, he was still outsmarted, and the royal guard would also be dealt with by Cruel. He wanted to know what the emperor had sent Dion to do. In the demon tribe's territory, Ririnel suddenly sensed a familiar aura approaching. Being a massive fan of his, she couldn't be mistaken. It was Dion, the Commander Zero of the demon world, and leaders of the fairy, mermaid, dwarf, and vampire tribes. They were discussing the empire's war movements. Surely, the kingdom of Olion was just the first target. After its conquest, their place would be next. As a tribal leader, she couldn't sit idly by. Dion had rushed here to meet the Demon King. The Demon King was delighted at his return, yet others here doubted his trustworthiness. Moreover, this was a meeting of the tribal leaders. Dion openly shared the emperor's commands with them, not hiding anything. Anyway, he was just fattening here and could be slaughtered at any time. He also mentioned the demon world's magics being used in the human world as he was investigating a sect called the Church of Atonement under the Emperor's orders. Before leaving, he was reminded to visit his private doctor to check his physical condition. The other tribes dared to blame the appearance of the demon world's magic in the human world as a declaration of war, fearing that their tribes would be implicated. This infuriated the Demon King, who unleashed a terrifying power to suppress everyone. Compared to him, who is considered the strongest Demon King, they were just children. Ed was also thrilled that he had returned. Both Ben and Ed started paying extra attention to him and scolded those who had left their master in such a battered state. They were the weakest and most useless. Are you talking about me? Hien also rushed over to give him a gift but was stopped by Ed, as her status was the lowest among the demons there. Luckily, Dion reminded him not to kill her, otherwise, Hien couldn't have survived her daring actions. Her gift was a monster flower, so ugly it could scare anyone just by looking at it. Suddenly, a knife flew towards him. It was the commander of the Demon Army Legion 2, Devilania. The demon world was indeed terrifying. In the Demon King's castle, she was the one he feared confronting the most. She had bought a bunch of gifts for him and even forced him to try them all on, turning him into her personal model. The act of changing clothes was exhausting for him. At this moment, a fearsome figure entered, the commander of the Demon Army Legion 8, Hell. I came to see you because I heard you had returned, but this guy was somewhat dumb, getting stuck mid-sword at the entrance and couldn't get in. It was hilariously absurd. He was so foolish. He became instantly disheartened. After such a long time, this was the first time he had the courage to meet his idol. He was a demon born from the darkness with the strength of the Demon King. Initially, he was tasked with overseeing the cities, but then, he received a secret mission just when the commander of the Zero Regiment was not participating in the demon forces. His job was to ensure Dion's identity was not revealed to the human world. It was not by chance that the Empire's soldiers, let alone the entire world, knew nothing about the commander of the Zero Regiment. That night, Hell came to meet him, but with this appearance, was he trying to scare the ghosts? It scared the hell out of him. Ben also rushed over because he sensed that he had been injured, but the guy beside him was about to apologize with his life. What an overreaction, he just wanted to say he had done a good job and tell him to hurry back so he could sleep. That guy was ecstatic as if his crush had just agreed. Alright, hurry up and let me sleep. These people are crazy, can't even sleep peacefully. End of part 1.